Appropriate time.
Kev, I guess we're just going to hand it off to you right now, and you do your thing, and we'll fit in underneath it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Happy afternoon, morning, evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Kevin Moncrief, and it's my honor to open today's event featuring Delfeayo Marsalis in conversation with Jim Merod. I serve as Vice President of Mission Integration at Soka University of America. On behalf of the Center for Race, Ethnicity, and Human Rights, we are delighted to raise the question of how the power of jazz can weave together our great American family and unite a nation for peace. Indeed, the compassionate family is the cradle for creativity, wisdom, and courage. We can find this story of jazz as it has emerged in the Marsalis family, the multi-generational New Orleanian music dynasty as told by its master trombonist, Delfeayo Marsalis. Mr. Marsalis was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, and is among the world's most renowned trombone players. He has dedicated his life to music, theater, and education. At the age of 17, Delfeayo began his career as a producer. Since then, he has produced over 120 recordings, garnering 1 Grammy Award and several nominations. Delfeayo has played trombone in bands led by jazz legends Ray Charles, Art Blakey, Max Roach, Elvin Jones, and Slide Hampton, as well as leading his own groups. In 2008, he formed the Uptown Jazz Orchestra, a highly entertaining ensemble that maintains important jazz traditions such as riff playing, New Orleans polyphony, and spontaneous arrangements. In 2000, Delfeayo formed the Uptown Music Theater, a nonprofit organization that empowers youth through musical theater training. He has written 16 musicals to date based on historical and/or uniting the community. His American Legacy series includes informational works of Harriet Tubman, Althea Gibson, Duke Ellington, the Harlem Renaissance, and those crazy 60s. In addition, he has composed over 90 songs that help introduce kids to jazz through musical theater and has reached over 5,000 students nationally with his Swinging with the Cool School soft introduction to jazz workshops. Delfeayo has a dual degree in music performance and production from Berklee College of Music, a master's in jazz performance from the University of Louisville, and was conferred a doctorate from the New England College. In 2011, he was named the NEA Jazz Master, along with his father Ellis and brothers Branford, Winton, and Jason, the highest honor given to a jazz musician in America. Delfeayo is 2017 Best of the Beat Award winner for Best Contemporary Jazz Artist in New Orleans, and his latest album, Make America Great Again, was named 2017 Best Contemporary Jazz Recording. My colleague, Jim Merod, Professor of American Literature at Soka University of America, will moderate. Dr. Merod is a teacher, critic, and writer. For more than 20 years, he has been a jazz and blues recording and mastering engineer. He has recording credits with many of the greatest American jazz musicians. Perhaps the best way to describe Dr. Merod is with his own words, drawing from the award-winning book, Whisper Not, the autobiography of Benny Golson. From a very young age, Jim has ensconced within the richly divergent, often glorious jazz world, where he came to know a large contingent of its most significant members. For him, the ultimate reward has been the appreciation and acceptance of my writing and playing from the audience. He sees art as a lifetime achievement. It is the beautiful agony of striving to discover new things. In their conversation, let us discover new things by celebrating these lifetimes of achievements. Without further pause, I present the magnificent Marsalis American jazz family as told by its master trombonist, Delfeayo Marsalis. Take it away.
Delf, unmute your, there you go. We unmute the thing there, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Let me just look at you and say, Delf, you must have an opening word or 10 or 12. Let's begin with whatever you got on your mind, please.
Well, that's my baby. I was going to start off with a song that we all love and have known for many years. And I said, well, yeah, that's a good one. You know, I love that tune because it's a blues and it's happy sounding. A lot of times we think the blues is something that might be a little sad, but you know, we blow the blues to make things better. I'm gonna play something that's an original composition, and I wrote this one a little while back, and we all can relate to the Electoral College blues. And that's Electoral College. And I, Thank you, music lovers. Thank you. Electoral College.
Delph, the trombone is such a rugged instrument, and not a whole lot of people, given other instruments, prefer to plug into the trombone. But hearing you with your mute now, I'm wondering if you could say a few words about the range of the trombone's sound with and without mutes, the way you're able to control it.
Right. Well, I grew up playing a lot of classical music, and I think the advantage for me there is that sound has always been very important. And so if you just have the open horn, you know, and that's the thing when you're trying to play a melody, then you know people recognize that tone. So you got the sound aspect of it. So then when you add the mute, and of course there's several kinds of mutes. One of the early mutes, the plunger mute, and that's actually, yes, the same plunger that you use for other things around the house. And you just take the plunger. I don't have a plunger here. This is similar. It's called the wah-wah mute. And that's when you hear the old Charlie Brown and the teacher was talking, wah, 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 wah. And that's why it's called wah-wah, because we can make that kind of sound. But this is a great device to have because you can really talk. You can sound like you're talking more. So if you ask me something, I say, wah, 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 wah. And there was a great, the last of the great plungers was a fellow by the name of Al Gray. Al Gray spent many years with the Count Basie Orchestra. Man, he was a character.
Boy, wasn't he?
He was a real character. He's from Philly, but he's just real country. And he had a book that, of course, I loaned it to a trumpet player and never got the book back. But it's a plunger technique. And he said there's 5 positions. So it's close, 1, 3, 4. So it's 5 positions. So one is open, it's closed. And then you just figure out when you're talking what you want to say. Anyway, so that's it. And then of course you have Tommy Dorsey, and he would play with more of a straight mute, and he just wanted to sing. There was a mute that they no longer make. It was called a solo mute, and it focused the sound a certain kind of way. A lot of the guys in the early days, J.D. Johnson, Tommy Dorsey would use that special mute. So it's good to give a different effect and a different sound.
The trombone can have a very special appeal in New Orleans music of the kind that you're so great about. When you write for your New Orleans ensembles, I don't know if you put yourself up front intentionally or if it just happens to work, but talk about how the trombone works within your New Orleans sound.
Yeah, I don't typically, for me, it's just like writing for orchestra. It's like, so for us, it's the clarinet and the trumpets. They have the high part. Saxophone, really the what you learn from Duke Ellington is really the voicings are all in the saxophones. The saxophones give you that richness because of the range. You have the baritone saxophone, and then up to the alto, sometimes soprano saxophone. So that's a very wide range. And the saxophones can blend very well. And then the second, in the jazz orchestra, the second group is the trombones, as far as being able to blend. So trombones, again, we have great range and we can blend, not as much dexterity as the saxophones. So that's why saxophones get, the majority of the lines. And the trumpets, they're like trumpets can't do but one of a couple of things. So, you just use the trumpets for effect. They can either play a melody real loud or they can peck, they can give you rhythm. Other than that, what are the trumpets? Come on, trumpets, what are y'all doing? And give you attitude. You got to have trumpets for a certain kind of attitude. Trumpet players have a certain kind of attitude, so you need that. So I'd say that when I'm composing, in fact, I'd like to play. Are we set up where I can share some music? Or,
Do it, sure. What do you got?
We're set up for me. Let me get this. I want to play a song. It might be early to play this. Hopefully, we don't run too many people off. But just speaking of the band, here's one of our great compositions called "The Raid on the Mingus House Party." And the thing that's really special about this song is, in addition to stealing the bass part from Batman, which wasn't intentional, it gives you an idea of how the band comes. So I'll play a little bit of it, then I might skip forward to, so we got about 10 different melodic ideas going on at one time, which is a rare thing. You listen to Beethoven and these guys, Wagner, they might have 5 or 6 things. And it's rare that you have, but 10 things going on at one time. So you'll hear how that comes.
Do that. Only a nutcase would do that.
Yeah, or people from New Orleans. So here we go. All right, let me share this. Okay, here we go. Let me see if I can do this. Oh, wait, I just gotta do one thing here. Sorry, y'all. Give me a moment for, I've gotta just do this. Okay, cool. And now this is there. And now I should be able to share. Let me go. All right, y'all, here it's coming. It's coming soon. Okay, this, and I want to share the sound. Okay, hopefully you can see that. And here it is.
Yep.
Okay, is it gonna play? Oh, it's deciding it doesn't want to play. Huh. Okay, we'll see what happens here. Let's see what we got going on here.
My presence is a jinx. I can screw anything up, man.
That might, yeah, okay. Let me try to come up with an alternate solution here. But I would say that the great thing about New Orleans and New Orleans music is the New Orleans musicians is our ability to play as an ensemble and for everyone to kind of know where to fit in and know how to make something happen.
Well, I gotta press you on that because frankly, and I think you know how much music I've heard, recorded, and loved in my life, and I'm an old guy. One of the most amazing things, and this is absolutely true, Delf, when you brought your band to Soca for the first time several years ago, and I'd ask you if you could like recreate that amazing album, Duke Ellington's, that you'd brought out on Such Sweet Thunder. You took Ellington's 18-piece voicings and you recreated it with 9. I'll never understand how you could do that.
Yeah, it's the luck of the draw,
Oh, yeah.
Well, let me just say, and how that came to be, I was studying at the University of Louisville, and had an English class, and the teacher, we had to write a paper, and she said, well, surely there's a relationship between music and English. And I said, yeah, Ellington did the Shakespearean suite, Such Sweet Thunder. And man, I went to the Smithsonian and I was able to get the original scores in Ellington's hand. And so which was amazing. Right, and that's when I started to see how he sculpted these things. So the way Ellington would compose, he'd have 2 lines for the saxophone, 1 line for the trumpets and trombones, and then another line for the bass. And some of the trombone might be in that part also. So that's how he would write. He'd write for the saxophones on 1 line, and Harry Carney, who was the Barry player, always had his own line. Then the trombones and the trumpets, the brass, usually the brass were playing together. And then occasionally when they broke off, he would switch them down to the bass line, to the bass part. And man, I looked at that and I'm like, oh, so we don't really need all of these instruments. And it's just a question of what you're going to keep and what you're going to leave out.
You went to the X-ray inside of Such Sweet Thunder.
Yeah, and it just kind of worked out, and I was really delighted. I was able to play it for the remaining members of the original band that played Such Sweet Thunder, Clark Terry and also Monsignor John Sanders. And they both seemed to think that, Ellington would have appreciated hearing it, and it really was special to hear, especially Clark Terry.
Well, Clark in the Dark would have known because he and Ellington were tight for a long time.
Oh yeah, and the main thing about doing that is I'm not a believer in repertory music per se. In other words, some people, they want to recreate Duke Ellington's band of the 1950s. They want to have the same mouthpiece and reeds, and they want to get the same. I'm like, man, no, indeed not, because Ellington's music didn't sound the same,
right?
From the 40s to the 50s to the 60s. So my idea is, how can we change it up? I think I got the Mingus here, but I want to play some of this for you. And you're going to hear how this particular song, how it builds and develops each chorus. All right, we're sharing the sound. Okay, this should certainly work. Here we go, Raid on the Mingus House Party. That's the first melody. We got 2 melodies. Woo! Four melodies coming in. So, wow. And man, it's so much fun for us. There's no way to explain what that's like to be able to create, because a composition like this, it requires group effort. It really, and this, when we talk about jazz representing democracy, this is exactly what it is. So some of us have written parts and others of us have to improvise, but what they're creating is part of the overall orchestration.
What's wonderful about that is Mingus was so close in his enamorment with Duke that what you gave us there was the Ellington sound with the Mingus vibe, in which you're playing and dancing like dolphins. You got them both, man.
Right. And I'm going to go to the just briefly, I'm going to go to the end of the solo, because what happened is, while we're in the, it's an interesting thing. I got to step back. I was in a doing physical therapy, and I asked the therapist to put on the classical station. He put it on, and I was listening to something. I don't remember if it was Mozart or Beethoven. And I commented, I said, oh, man, that's interesting. He's got the strings broken up and the top strings are playing one thing and the bottom strings are playing something else. And the therapist said to me he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, this is like 40 or 50 different people playing. And he said, man, I've only thought of that as being one instrument. Like, no, he had no idea. Like when he hears classical music, he was just thinking he didn't understand it was 40 or 50 people. But that made me realize, it's like, sometimes when we're playing, a lot of times in jazz, we're focused on the solo. Yeah. Whereas from an audience standpoint of view, it's more about the sound palette.
Sure.
So what happens here is our tenor player is playing. Is the tenor player? Somebody's soloing. Our alto player is soloing. Or they're trading. And then I start pointing to people. I point to the Barry sax player and I said, just start playing while the solos are going on. And you'll hear how we develop it right here. Let me get, here it is. Here. We're playing riffs behind it. So, you know, and to me, this represents what America is. It represents kind of the chaos but it's organized. And, you know, there's a lot of things that are going on all of the time. And that's the beauty. And also it's kind of the interesting thing at the same time, that there's so many things going on and we're trying to navigate and we're trying to make sense out of it, you know? And
well, I'll guarantee you that's interesting, and it's interesting for the reasons you're saying, as well as that contrast between Mingus and Ellington. I mean, boy, Mingus did adore the Duke, and you got that there too.
Yeah, Mingus wrote he got the essence of Ellington, and he was able to put that into a small ensemble. So what I'm trying to do is to bring what Mingus did more to a large ensemble.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, it's difficult from the standpoint of the more individuals you have, the more difficult it is to trust what they're going to do. So that's the thing with the band, is being able to trust everybody to know and to make.
Well, I've met your band a couple times, and they seem to not only trust you, they seem to love you. And I think they kind of love each other in a way that's not hokey, but is deep and artistic and even brotherly. There's something nice about that.
Oh yeah. Well, you can tell by the way we play. I mean, that's just, so it's good times. It's good times.
I got to ask you, Delf, to say a word, because it would be almost a sin to have you here with us and have you not say a word about Pops, and if you could, even Sidney Bechet.
Yeah, you know, the great thing of jazz and the early jazz musicians is that they were able to overlook a lot that was going on. Not even overlook it, but they were able to overcome and to see a different path. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's always been a lot of violence and negativity in this country for whatever reason. And you think about Louis Armstrong and Sidney Bechet and how rough of a time Louis Armstrong had. I mean, you got to figure that was a rough time. That was really, really rough. But he was always able to look past it. And there's something about whenever you hear the sound of his voice or his horn, he's telling you, man, everything's going to be all right. And that's the kind of disposition that I struggle to embrace that all of the time, you know, because there's so many wacky things going on. We just have to say, man, you know, we're just here for a short visit and we got to make the best out of it. And that's kind of what the plan is. Louis Armstrong, you can't say enough, the greatest American.
Yeah.
No American was greater than Louis Armstrong in the trajectory of where he started off to where he ended up. And he loved everybody. And he didn't allow the foolishness to get in the way. He always understood who he was. Yep. And sometimes, you know, we let other people take us out of our area. And that's really the goal and the aim. Sidney Bechet was a great, great musician. You know, his trajectory was different from, you know, Louis Armstrong.
Well, they had antithetical personalities, first of all.
Oh, yeah, yeah. In fact, the Bechet should have probably played trumpet too, because he had that trumpet mentality more so. No, he switched from clarinet to soprano saxophone so that he could compete with the trumpets. Because you know, trumpet, what you gonna do? It's a trumpet. Trumpet starts playing, you can say, okay, well, yeah, trumpet. That's just.
But Bechet could kill you with a clarinet or an alto sax, man.
Yeah, but he wanted to make sure that, you know, and the thing about that high saxophone is it cuts. So when he's trying to compete, whereas the clarinet is just a more mellow instrument, but one of the all-time great virtuosos of the music. But Baby Dodds, I have an article, and Baby Dodds said that he played with Louis Armstrong at some point. Also, he played with King Oliver, and he said that when the band played, they played specifically for the people. And he said when they played a slow number, they played so soft that you could hear the people's feet as they were dancing.
Good Lord.
And that's what we're trying to bring back, that understanding of for the art. You know, we want the people to love what it is. We want to actually engage the people more so than, man, check out what I'm doing. Look at what I practice. Like, I can do this. It's less about that, and it's more about how can we help everybody to come in and heal, and whatever's wrong, how can we help make that better? And that's a New Orleans thing. That goes way back, man. That's a great New Orleans tradition. And I'm telling the youngsters, man, embrace that. Embrace that New Orleans tradition. It's great. You know, a lot of it has to do with the Africans. You know, the biggest advantage we have in New Orleans is that we weren't colonized by the British. You know, the British didn't like music. It may have changed. Look, think about it. You know, Germany and Austria, they had Mozart, and they had Bach, and they had Beethoven, and then you had, you know, Puccini. The Italians had, you know, Verdi. So yeah, what did England have? They had Handel, and he was German. And he got into a scruff with the Queen because she wanted music, the fireworks suite. He had the right music for when they were, you know, playing, the fireworks were going off through his music. Or else the water music was written so that when the Queen is going on her barge, Handel was like, come on, man, are y'all serious? Anyway, the English settlers got to America, and they was like, no, take them drums away from them Africans, because we don't know what, cut it. Down here in New Orleans, the Spanish and the French were like, yeah, this is kind of a jive situation, but look, let's see what y'all got. Let's see what y'all doing with them drums. And man, you know, that's the great thing about New Orleans. Everybody can come together with all of our differences and get along.
I got to ask you this. I know nobody heard him, and certainly no recording of him, but Buddy Bolden. Just give us a word on how you heard the myth and the history, probably fictive history, about Buddy Bolden playing his trumpet across the Mississippi.
Yeah, well, none of my brothers are on, so they can't argue with me, but my understanding is that Buddy Bolden was like the first pop musician. He was the first guy that really had popular acclaim, and based on what Jelly Roll Morton and a couple of the other musicians said, he just played really loud and aggressive, and the people really loved it. But the older musicians seemed to, you know, they preferred the style of Bunk Johnson.
Okay.
And people who played with more of a smoother tone. Yeah. But man, he was just one of those guys that understood what the people wanted, and he gave it to them, you know? Exactly what he would have sounded like. I think it's actually a better thing that we don't have the recording. Well, okay. We can just imagine.
Well, you may be right about that.
But I'm saying, you know, Louis Armstrong, just that level of compassion and understanding and love and sympathy and empathy, I would say Louis Armstrong was very unique. As much as he was influenced by King Oliver, who was another great individual,
right?
I would say that Buddy Bolden was great. It's great as a mythical hero, but it's hard to believe that it'd get much better than what Louis Armstrong did.
I got 5 pictures of Louis up around this house. That's how much Bops has influenced me. I got to ask you, please, about your family. I mean, what an amazing family. I met Winton when he was 16 years old, and I hung out with Branford, and he's a lot of fun. And there's you and Ellis, who we lost. Say something about your remarkable, remarkable family, please.
Yeah, well, you know, I always appreciate that. We didn't necessarily look at it that way in the early days. And, you know, the way I see it, my dad was a serious musician here in New Orleans. He wanted to play jazz. Nobody down here. I said the last time they said, oh, the birthplace of jazz. I said, yeah, that's the last time people loved jazz in New Orleans, was back when it was first birthed. You know, people here want to have a party, man. They want to have a good time. So my dad was playing jazz back when everybody wanted to hear Fats Domino, or they wanted to hear Alan Toussaint, and they wanted to hear Ray Charles. And nothing again, you know, that's great music.
No, I agree.
That's great music. But you know
Yeah.
what my dad wanted to do was not as listener friendly, for sure.
Mhm.
And you know, he got together with my mother. My mother had the vision for the family. My mother's vibe, my dad's vibe was he wanted to play piano. My mother was like, she studied home economics at Grambling University, Grambling State University. So once they started having a family, it was important for her. She really wanted, she was a feminist too. So she really wanted a daughter. She ended up with all boys. It's like, oh, well, mom, that's kind of the humor of it all. So, you know, it was an old school traditional family. My dad went out, he made the bacon, you know, brought it home. My mother was responsible for, she did everything else. In fact, that was the way she wanted it. So she kept the house up. She made sure, you know, got all of the clothes, and she worked on a budget, man. It wasn't no kind of money being made.
Yeah.
And so at any rate, you know, we were very close. We lived in a small house, and she always said that she had an opportunity to buy, they had an opportunity to buy a house. The house was $13,000, and we all would have had our own room, and they couldn't get the down payment. So she just said, pfft. So we grew up in a real, that's why people say, man, do you see your brothers? I'm like, man, I've seen enough of them over the years. We grew up in a close, you know, environment. At any rate, you know, we grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, and that was the tail end of the civil rights movement. And there was a lot of nonsense going on. So she just had a thing where we had to represent a certain kind of way. And we were kind of the sacrificial lambs. So we had to go to these integrated schools. And, you know, it's a lot of sacrifice doing that. There's a lot of sacrifice when you know, go out of your community and you're going to an integrated school.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it worked out. So I would say that. Now, my dad, you know, she gave him an opportunity to just focus on his music, and he did teach, and he found his groove. And, you know, they had a great relationship in that respect. It was well defined. So he came out, and he's such a great teacher because he would teach by example. He wasn't about all of the nonsense. He just was a great thing, you know. He just would tell you to get it together. And then as you got a little bit together, he'd give you something else. And if you didn't get it together, you don't get it together. It was cut and dry with him. Okay, this is what we're doing. You want to do it, do it. If you don't. Go do something else.
So it was all about no BS, in other words.
No. And he was a great teacher. The greatest thing was to be able to play on the bandstand with him. He's not so much a teacher for beginners as much as for intermediate to advanced, because what he can teach you on the bandstand, there's no way. I remember we did a family concert, and we played some song, and, you know, I played, and then Branford played, went and played. Man, and then my dad started off, and he just, after the first couple of notes, I turned to Branford, I said, man, we're going to just stand there and let him do this? And Branford said, yeah, well, what else we going to do? Because what he played was so pure and honest. You know, and that's the difficulty. And that's the thing that a couple of different jazz musicians, Elvin Jones and Milt Hinton, they said the same thing, which is this music is about honesty. And the real impact is when you can be honest and present yourself. And, you know, look at Thelonious Monk is an example of the most honest, and he knew what it was. So that's how my dad played. He was just really a pure sound. And, you know, it's a great loss. It's great.
When you and your dad were here a few years ago in that dual concert, honesty, candor, clarity, profundity, sometimes simplicity, and majesty radiated.
Yeah, the great example of working with my dad is we played a gig in Monterey, and there was a band went on before us, and the younger guys, and man, they were playing really energetic, and they were playing fiery stuff, and that's what I really loved, kind of what we call the burnout. So I'm telling my dad, man, we got to come up with something, you know, we got to come up with something strong to come on, you know, we coming up after these kids, listen to what they.
Yeah.
And my dad said, well, it seems like the program we have already designed is going to give us the best chance. And sure enough, we went out and we played, it was more mellow, but the people were they were ready to hear something mellow. So I'm like, the absolute wrong strategy would have been, now we got to go play something he just knew. He knew what it was when it came to music. And but he would also give me that, you know, if I called a tune, he'd say, okay.
He will do. He did it the night you were here.
Yeah, he's like, that's what you want to do. But you know, great. And the other thing is he understood personalities, because we all have different personalities. You know, the way Branford is and the way that Branford learns is different from how Winton is and Winton learns, myself and Jason. So the great thing about seeing him teach is that he's almost like the master chess player who's playing 10 different chess games, and he knows exactly what piece to move. And that's how he taught. So he could teach 10 different students, and he would be able to give each one something unique that's tailored to what they needed. And yeah, I mean, he had a great methodology, and we certainly
when your father sent Winton, because it was kind of like that, back to New York when he was such a young guy, he knew that Winton's going to need somebody who was going to be the mentor the way he had been, and it was Albert Murray. Did you get to know Albert Murray, not the way Winton did, but did you come across Albert?
I met him a couple of times, and we did hang out. He came to New Orleans, and I took him out. And, you know, yeah, Albert Murray was a great guy, but, you know, Winton had access to such great people. You know, Albert Murray, Playthell Benjamin. Of course, he met Stanley Crouch. And, you know, New York is very different from New Orleans, for sure, in that respect. Just the amount of things that are going on. You know, New Orleans has a really unique thing, but New York has the disparity and the difference.
Will you talk about some of this incredible stuff you do with concerts? And I love the book you gave me a few years ago, No Cell Phone Day, that kind of thing you do. I don't think many people know about that part of you.
Yeah, well, I've worked with kids for a long time, and I don't even know what inspired it. One day, my daughter she was fairly young. It seemed like she must have been 5 or 6 even. And I said, we were going to have a no cell phone day. And I just said, you know, we just unplugged, which was not a big deal at that point. And man, she just really had a great time. It was like she announced to everybody, we're having a no cell phone day. She was young, because that's how she was said. We're having a no cell phone day. So, you know, we packed a lunch, and then we, you know, took the streetcar. The story is a little different from what actually occurred, but you know, that's how that goes. But you know, it's, and I try to tell her now, it's like, sometimes you got to just unplug and uncharge, and, you know, recharge. Like, you got to unplug and just recharge the batteries. And, you know, it just, there's so much going on. There's a book that was written 20 something years ago called Data Smog. And it's really what we have. It's just, things are constantly being thrown at you. Sometimes you just need a break. You know, sometimes you just need to chill. So I'm hopefully going to write another book. That's the only one that I have to date, but I have some ideas, some stories.
When you look back at the history of jazz, which you know very well, and you're part of it, do you have any sense at all, I mean, even just the vague glimmerings of how jazz is going to continue to evolve? I didn't say advance, but continue to evolve, because it's gone through a number of periods, and we can name them for what that's worth. Where do you think jazz is now, and where do you think it's going to go, or is that a bogus question?
Yeah, I think it's in a tough spot. This is the toughest spot we've been in. So if the musician that's going to get to the next level of greatness that we've seen in the past, it will be different from that, but they will have to be able to play everything. And you have the older musicians, for example, a number of the earlier musicians, if it's, you know, Miles or Charlie Parker or Coltrane, or these guys came up in R&B bands. At some point, they play with a rhythm and blues band. And what that does is that gives you an understanding of making the people feel good when you play.
Right. That's right.
You know, it's not about, and most of the musicians today, they're learning more from an academic standpoint of view. And the feeling is really the most important thing. And that's why people love New Orleans music so much. You know, the brothers playing in the brass bands out in the street, they get it. They might not be playing, you know, they might not be playing, you know, technically or harmonically advanced material, but man, that stuff makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the key, is in but you know, popular music today is, man, it's just getting tricky. You know, it's every time we say, man, is it going to really keep going on this kind of Yeah, it looks like this. So it's difficult because you want to support the young artists, but at the same time, you want to say, all right,
Yeah.
come on, y'all,
Do your own thing.
we got to represent.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
So, but at any rate, saying that to say, I don't know. I'm trying to, if we could just find a trumpet player down here in New Orleans, that's what needs to happen. We need to get a young trumpet player to come out. That's just how it is.
We're gonna have to send somebody down there to help rescue you.
Man, we just need to, but it's really, really tough because I was talking to Branford yesterday and he said Lisa in Cult Jam released a song in the late 70s or early 80s. And he said it had a saxophone sample on a keyboard. Now, it was, if it's back then, it was really bad. It's not like today you can hear the instrument, it sounds close, but he said nobody even batted an eye, and he knew that instrumental music was doomed. So
Right.
now what we have is it's really challenging for instrumental musicians, and everything is so lyric based that, we used to have great bands. Wait, do I have, hold up. Hold on, we used to have really great middle school bands. Man, let me show. So look, I can say openly, can you see this?
Yes, I can.
It says Carter G. Woodson Tiger Band.
Yeah.
I'm not at all a fan of a certain store. I'm not going to name it, but it's a big outlet store. And right after Hurricane Katrina, I went to this store. It was the only one open and I needed something. And a fellow saw me in the store and he said, Marsalis. I said, yes, sir. He said, wait right here. And he went to his car and he came back and he gave me this CD. And he said to me, man, my house flooded and I had a stack of records and the record on the top was my middle school band. This is a middle school concert band. And he said, and man, it was so great. He said, I transferred it to CD and I was waiting to find somebody to give it to. And he gave me this, and I know a couple of the guys that were in the band. It's like Walter Harris. Like New Orleans has a great legacy and history of musical education.
Absolutely.
We know about my dad, but man, there was Walter Harris, and there was Lloyd Harris, and there was Yvonne Bush. Like they were teachers who were serious, and the students were coming up and they were playing. I mean, they knew how to read. Yep. They were playing, concert material.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that to say it's nothing at all like that now. It's nothing at all like that, today.
There is someone who you introduced me to 5 or 6 years ago up in Temecula, and who ate dinner with me the night that I gave Benny Golson the award at your brother's Lincoln Center. Sullivan Fortner. That guy is amazing.
Oh yeah.
He is amazing.
Yeah. Sullivan has studied, man. He's got that New Orleans. This is something that the New Orleans guys have. And I'm hoping that the younger musicians don't lose that. The younger musicians, they're listening at the records and everything. They want to sound like people from North Carolina, or they want to sound like people from other regions. And I'm saying, bruh, keep that New Orleans thing, man. That is the thing. And Duke Ellington would always encourage his musicians, say, if you come from a place like, Juan Tizo was from Puerto Rico, he said, bring some of those sounds. And they ended up writing the song
Caravan,
right. I was thinking of there's another one, Moon Over something. I'm not thinking of, is it Havana or something, but Caravan.
Moon Over Miami, that's not.
No, it was Moon Over Havana.
Oh, really? Anyway, I don't know that. Okay.
Moon Over Cuba, maybe it's Moon Over Cuba. Anyway, but saying that to say, I'm trying to tell the New Orleans guys, please, bro, keep the New Orleans thing in your hip pocket. That's the thing. And that's a great tradition. And the other thing I'll tell you also about New Orleans, if I didn't mention it, man, I could get together with a traditional New Orleans player and a brass band player and a guy that's playing bebop, a swing musician, a modern guy, a funk guy, a rock guy. We could all get together and we'd be able to do something.
Yep.
And there's no other city in the world where you can get guys from that. And I mean, play something like hip. Not just, well, let's just play a blues and see what happens. Because the New Orleans guys know what to do. This is such a great city. Man, it's just, you got the right idea. They got the right idea.
Can you talk about a couple of trombonists in your life, whether you met them or not, but whose playing has somehow meant a lot to you as a player?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, plenty. You mean like that? You said that I didn't necessarily meet, or I could have met, or
Yeah, well, I mean, for example, I'm wondering just off the top, I don't know if you knew JJ, but did JJ influence your playing?
oh, that's the primary
All
influence,
right.
J.J. Johnson. And I did meet J.J. And it's funny because I, when I first met J.J., I said something crazy, something silly on the phone to him. I don't know what it was. And so I first met J.J. He came Moon over Cuba. That was it. Thank you, Miss Ono.
Okay.
So J.J. played in Boston. He played 6 nights, 12 shows. I had 12 tickets. I went to every single show. And there were certain things about what he did technically that I was trying to figure out. And I worked out a lot of it by watching him. When he would go to certain things, I would watch him and see, okay, how is he pulling this off?
Yeah.
So at any rate, I might have said, I commented to JJ, he played a high note, which he didn't really play. He wasn't known for that. So I think he thought I was one of the guys that was, oh, how high can you play? How
Yeah.
bad? He thought I was one of those guys. So 3 or 4 nights into it, he comes by and he says, yeah, no high Fs. And I said, man, you playing so much hard, you don't have to hit any high Fs. And then he's like, oh man, come up to the room. So then it was cool. So then, we hung out for a little while. But JJ was one of those guys that you had to figure it out for yourself. He would help you, but it's like, just get to work. That was his attitude.
And he was the sweetest man in the whole world.
Yeah, great, really great guy.
Absolutely.
And serious musician. The guys that I didn't meet, who I would say are very influential, Tommy Dorsey, I mentioned earlier on, Trummy Young, Al Gray is a guy that was very instrumental. Tyree Glenn, between Al Gray and Tyree Glenn, the way that they played, it suits my personality more than the way that JJ played. JJ was coming from a different place, which is a great place. Curtis Fuller, I spent some time with him and he gave me great advice. Slide Hampton, so many of the guys, and they all so generous and all so cool. But I think the main thing was understanding the importance of New Orleans. The main thing I learned from meeting all these different players and how they sounded was I've got to keep the roots, keep the sound happening. And that's
I don't mean to throw you a curve here, but I'm really intrigued. Has Frank Rossellino's playing, which is so utterly unique, had any pressure, influence, or inspiration for you?
None.
I kind of thought that would be the case.
No, I love. There's guys named Calvin Green in Seattle, and he loved Frank Rossellino. But Frank Rossellino just was so quirky. It's just so quirky and unique and different.
Yes.
He really should have played trumpet. He had more of a trumpet player kind of mentality. But no, I mean, a great player. I don't want to sound.
No, I mean, he was an amazing player.
The wrong way. He was really, but for me, the way that he played, I'm just, I prefer kind of more of a smoother sound. He was more the guy that'd be in your face. You could imagine him, you said something wrong to him and he'd be up on you like, come on, what? It's like, oh, okay, hold up, bro. And that's how he played. It's always just like, rah. Carl Fontana, who I met once, who gave me a great lesson, and just a real musician's musician.
Oh, yeah.
Serious guy.
Oh, yes.
I was on a gig and I wasn't making any of the changes.
Uh-oh.
and he sensed it. And so it was a group of trombone players. So I finished playing, and then he started playing the guide tones. And I'm like, dang, that's all it was?
That's all it was.
No, I mean, I think I soloed first, man. And I didn't know the song, and I didn't have it together. Whereas had I waited, I could have had a sense of what it actually was.
Yeah, but Fontana made a lot of difficult things look easy.
Oh yeah, great. So many great guys spending, their lives doing this and dedicated to the music. And I mean, I have the utmost respect for so many players and guys that are doing it. We have some questions over here. We're going to get to these questions people ask.
Sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Maya Ono says, thank you generously for sharing your music conversation and linking our humanity with music. I'm certainly trying to. Thank you.
Didn't you give us a couple of videos that might be of some interest to everybody?
What do you mean?
Huh? Kevin, you sent us a video or two. One was your New Orleans band, it seemed to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got the question, man. Hold on. How do you see our shaped future with live concerts and how we reconnect with people? We're going to get back to it. I'm convinced of that. how are the venues recalibrating? I mean, it's tough right now. So we just have to be patient. It's tough right now, but I know people are just waiting, boy. So I think this is an important, sometimes we have to learn important and valuable lessons. This, unfortunately, has been a year-long plus valuable lesson that we're learning about, not only about humanity, but about patience and understanding and working together. But I think for sure the concerts are going to come back. All right, this question was not from Maya. It was from Kazuko. Okay, thank you, Kazuko, for clarifying that. Thank you, Maya, for clarifying that that was Kazuko. So that's my answer to that. Victoria Krause says, did you or your father or members of your family play with or cross paths with Cannonball Adderley? Funny that you should mention it. My dad is actually on a record with Cannonball and Nat Adderley. I think it's called In the Bag. It's something to do with a bag. My brother Jason would know the answer to that. But there is a CD. My dad and James Black, I think Marshall, the bass player's name, I think is Marshall.
Marshall Hawkins?
No, it's a New Orleans guy.
Okay.
Or it might have been Richard Payne, but I think Marshall was the guy. I just can't think of his last name. So yeah, they played with Cannonball. You know Cannonball, man, what a great disposition. What a great, that's what we really need more, like the personalities of these guys. The other thing, Frank Rosalino, just a quirky personality. I think that's what we're kind of missing. A lot of the guys that are choosing jazz now, it's like, they say, oh, should I be an accountant? No, I'll play jazz. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we need the guys that are like, man, should I be a baller? No, I want to play jazz. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Cannonball was, nobody's ever been like Cannonball. He had the biggest personality in the world.
Yeah, very, very unique. And, he gets overlooked. You talk about Kind of Blue, and it's like, man, Cannonball and Wynton Kelly saved the record. Otherwise, if you take them off, and then it becomes like we're in the scientist lab and Miles Davis.
And then check out the last thing that band recorded before Kind of Blue, and that was on Green Dolphin Street. You got to check that out. People don't, that is even more amazing than Kind of Blue. And Cannon and Bill Evans are amazing.
Wait, you know which record?
I'm sure. It was on an LP that was called Jazz Track.
Okay.
And they had three solo.
Oh, yeah.
And it never got transferred. Columbia sent me all that stuff, so I got to know it. But it's amazing. It's not a minor masterpiece. It's a major masterpiece.
You get the right guys together. That's it. And gals. And speaking of which, Miss Krause also says, what are your thoughts on the popular current trendy jazz hip hop bands that are performing now, like Robert Glasper, Kamasi Washington, Terrace Martin? Some say they're not jazz. Some say they are. They're definitely not jazz. They're jazz based. But hey, I can embrace that. And you know if somebody plays jazz by how their eighth notes sound primarily, because when you know how to swing your eighth notes, it's not you have to do that. You don't have to play Duke Ellington of the 50s, but you have to know what that sound is. You have to know, and these guys are great. They're great musicians. They're very creative. But when you hear them, and I always think, like, what would Pop say, or what would Elvin say, or what would Max Roach say, or what would these guys that were there at the source, what would they say? They were there with Charlie Parker on the bandstand. And that's really the question. So again, not to say anything, but Robert Glasper, I think my brother Branford have this thing going because, Glasper chooses when he likes jazz and when he doesn't. So sometimes he'll do interviews and he's like, oh, jazz is dead and jazz is old and jazz, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing blah, blah, blah. And then other times he's like, oh yes, this is the new jazz. So, look, just pick your side, man. Whatever it is, it's cool. We cool with it. How are you going to do it? Yeah, do you. But I would say that definitely not jazz based though. And I'm cool with things that are jazz. A lot of what I'm playing now is more jazz based. But it's important for the guys who are considering themselves jazz. And let's face it, without Louis Armstrong and John Coltrane and Charlie Parker, Thelonious Monk, and the other, 300 or 400, 500 people, nobody would care about calling what they do jazz. But we want to lock into that credibility and that history and that thing. Come on, you can't have it both ways, and it's cool if you don't, you see what I'm saying? You don't have to say that it's something that is not.
Absolutely.
Cool. Whatever you're doing is cool. All right, Richard Ellen says Jack Teagarden is one of my favorites. I forgot about Jack T. He came out in the 20s and It was he and Harrison, Jimmy Harrison, and Harrison died young. So Jack Teagarden was like really, really phenomenal technique. Jack Teagarden was homegrown. So he did things on the trombone that you're not supposed to do because he didn't know any better. He's bad, bad. Seems obvious, but what's music? Okay, I don't really know what that question means. Seems obvious, but what's music? Okay, Ben Miles, if you want to clarify that a little bit more. Neil Faison, okay. Yeah, we'll see what you got on, Faison. Jennifer Delante says, what is the name of your book? And is it still in print? The Seattle Public Library doesn't appear to carry. Book is called No Cell Phone Day. And I don't know, it might be hard to get, y'all. Send me an email if you want one. I'll send you a copy. dmarsalis@dmarsalis.com. Dewey or Joshua, who would you prefer to play with? Well, you know, funny you mentioned that. If you're talking about Redmonds, Joshua Redmond actually started in my band. And he was fresh out of Harvard. And if you listen to my first CD, Pontius Pilate's Decision, he's on that. But it didn't work out in the band. I kind of fired him, which was the greatest thing that could have happened to him. And not long after that, he won the monk competition, and the rest is history, they say. Dewey Redmond, it's not even a fair question, but I would say that, you know, Dewey Redmond came up at a time when people were really being creative and different. So of those two, I prefer Dewey Redmond because I think he would push me to do something that I wouldn't ordinarily do.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and that's something special. Richard Cornell says it's polyphonic improvisation here to stay in New Orleans. It is that New Orleans polyphony. That's when what you just heard on the raid on the Mingus House Party is the ability to just 5 different guys playing at one time. Renee Bodie says, who are the young and upcoming jazz artists on your radar? Boy, that's a tough one. I like this young man on piano, Christian Sands. Christian Scott is a trumpet player, is a favorite of mine. You know, he's going kind of in another direction. But now he's an example of a guy that's taking it out, but he knows the real deal. He can be up in there with you playing the real jazz. And what he's doing now, it's more jazz based. It's kind of often. So I would put him at the top of that list that was mentioned earlier. All right, Neil Faison, talk about the jackets. Come on, bro, bring it. Someone says, where should someone begin to learn about jazz? It feels overwhelming. Louis Armstrong and King Oliver, you can't go wrong. Louis Armstrong, he spoke the truth. And then after that, just find things that you like. Don't necessarily trust it to YouTube, because boy, they'll go from Charlie Parker to Stan Getz in 2 songs. I'm like, hold on, I don't know if that's really the trajectory. It's like Charlie Parker, that's another one, man. I would say go with it's just like, what do we do with classical music? Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. You start with the big names. So I would say for sure, Louis Armstrong, you can't go wrong there. Count Basie Orchestra. You want to be put in a good mood. Oh, mercy, the Basie Orchestra, the hardest swinging band in the land.
He was at Pat Your Foot.
Yeah. In fact, Mark Gross, who plays alto saxophone with me, we had a thing because he played principal in the Ellington Orchestra. I was like, man, Basie Orchestra was outswinging every band. We went every decade. We went from the 30s, Basie band was swinging harder. We went to the 40s, the Basie band is swinging, the 50s, and he was like, damn, man, I can't believe it. I think it was Freddie Green. He played guitar. He never soloed.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I hired him at Princeton. And 2 o'clock in the morning, where they'd have 11 guys, Freddie literally put his hand up, stood up. Sonny Greer almost fell off the top riser. Marshall Royal looked like he was going to turn white. And in the video, Casey said to me, that man's been in my band for 14 years. That's the first solo we ever took.
Wow. Okay. But we don't have a recording of it, so we got to take your word on it. Let's see. Will Soca schedule you and your brother when live performances are continued? Thank you so much for that. I would imagine, hopefully they'll schedule us, probably not together, but maybe a couple of my brothers. You have to ask Jim Merod that. He knows better than I would.
If we can find him, we'll ask him.
Can I talk about the importance of NOCA in New Orleans and what you think arts education at a young age? Yeah, we all came through NOCA. They're having a tough time at it now because the model has changed. So back when we were in school, if a student came and they had a lot of talent, then they would throw everything at them. It's like, okay, you got the talent, so you got to go home and practice all of this stuff. Now, if somebody comes with talent, they just say, okay, independent study. So I think that's kind of a challenging position to have. And I'm like, man, if I find a youngster that's serious, yeah, I throw the book at him. I'm like, I'm gonna keep putting the weights on you until you say, no, I can't take it no more. And that's old school. And that way, you know, that student is gonna survive. That student, whatever the situation is. But I think education is important. I've always been a big fan of it. Miles said the definition of jazz, Louis Armstrong and Charlie Parker. Yeah, that's the truth there. Boy, you can't go wrong with those two. Do vocalists fit into anything you're writing or planning? Oh yeah, we have a great vocalist by the name of Tanya Boyd Cannon. In fact, I can play a little bit of that if I'm still allowed to share.
Yep.
Wait, let me figure out. Yeah, the new the last CD was called Jazz Party. Let me see what am I trying to do here? Okay, here we go. Yeah, Jazz Party. In fact, I've got some more vocal things coming up because everybody wants words. At a certain point, my daughter was like, I'm not listening at music that doesn't have words anymore, ever. I was like, oh, okay, well, that rules your daddy out, but okay. If that's really how you feel, what can I say to that?
I heard a guy, don't they?
Yeah, that's tough. Okay, this might be is this a video? This might be a video or it might not be a video. Let's see. It's okay, where am I? Okay, sorry, y'all. Here, share screen. Okay, here we go. Let me share the screen and I'm looking for this. Let's see what this is. Okay, this is at home live. Pearl and Riley on drums, Tanya Boyd Cannon. Now Roussel.
We're gonna have
grease there.
Yeah, that there, man. And you know, the great thing is to surround yourself with musicians who can contribute. So, for example, Tanya Boyd came over one morning. I said, "Hey, I got this song I want you to learn." And I sang it for, I played it piano, and gonna have a jazz party all night long. And she says, it'd be great if you just started off with a riff. And she said, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, just like that. And I had the recorder going. I'm like, okay, that's the song. That's like, and that's to me the key to the song is that riff there. But that's the thing, when you're in the presence of musicians, a lot of that, which we don't discuss, is the decisions that are made in real time. When you have other musicians that can contribute, a lot of times we think about it where it's okay, for example, Duke Ellington, he wrote all this great music. Man, a lot of times the musicians are having an impact. Maybe a musician plays a certain thing every night and you say, oh, okay, this will work in this way. Other times you write something and you give it to the musician. They're like, man, this is the better approach. So, I think that's one of the things. Maya Ono says, wouldn't jam sessions also be an important part of music education? Jam sessions it's important, but the problem with jam sessions today is it's like a weightlifting thing. It's like everybody's in the gym like, I can do 300 pounds. I can do 320. I can. So the essence of what a jam session has been kind of lost, which is the idea that you're getting together and you're exchanging ideas, but collectively you're working together. It's not just, okay, I've got to showcase what I've been working on. So jam sessions are tough. And, you got 10 or 15 guys, everybody wants to play long and this and that. So I would say constructive jam sessions certainly can help. But we just have to understand the function of the music in society. The music functions a different way. We're there to make sure that people are having a good time. And, that's the main thing I'd say.
You remember Johnny Hodges used to complain all the time to Duke that you're stealing my stuff from a rehearsal and you're writing the thing. I want the royalties.
Well, yeah, they wasn't that much royalty anyway, but I mean,
he wanted something.
No, that's it. But you never know where it's gonna come from. I'm kind of mad. This trumpet player, I was in a session yesterday with Branford. I played this one thing a couple of times, and the guy, he took it and played it in his solo. And he was playing first. So then I was like, bruh, I gotta play something else now. So man, play trumpet stuff. Don't be stealing the trombone stuff. What you doing over there? But but this is an example of what I'm saying. This is not, I wouldn't say, well, this is jazz. This is a song that's more jazz based. It's New Orleans, it's funky, it's bluesy, it's got all of those elements. But the fact that we can all play jazz is what makes it hip. The fact that you can hear, we play that, and we also could play Raid on the Mingus House Party.
Well, it sure was funky now, don't you think? Funk.
Oh yeah, funk and that's the key to it. It's like, and that's a big difference with how I'm playing. And my music has evolved just in the past decade, and it's influenced by the younger guys here in New Orleans. Corey Henry is a trombonist, Big Sam Williams, and of course Trombone Shorty. And these are guys, I'm checking out what they're doing, and I'm like, man, how can I use it? And that's the thing to me, is to not to exclude, but to include. So how much information can I include? And when I'm playing that solo, JJ would not really work for that particular solo.
Right.
You could play JJ, or you could play in a bebop style, but man, it's like, how could, people want to be like, it's gonna be, it's like, yeah, I don't know. Okay, well, maybe not. So that to me is the key. We want to learn as much as we can, and that's something that dealing with Branford, he's always trying to grab stuff from anywhere. I mean, that's another part I would say, going back to my dad, and really the part that I miss is him as a resource, because I could always ask my dad something, and he would just give his honest assessment of what the situation was, without any kind of personal feelings one way or the other. He would use the information, and that's an important element, to have.
Say something about some of the drummers who have influenced you, either as a player on the stage or growing up, because let's face it, drummers and the pulse are the very foundations of jazz. I'd like to hear some of the drummers who have been so important in your life. Oh
man, the most important was Elvin Jones. And I was fortunate to play with him for a number of years. You know, looking back, it was a bit of a sacrifice that I hadn't anticipated because, you know, in 92 or 3, it was, I think only JJ and myself had trombone-led bands that were actually out touring. And, I felt it was important to start playing with Elvin. And there's no way to really, you know, when you're on the road and you're traveling with somebody and they're like a father, almost a grandfather to you, and you're looking after them and they rely on you a certain way, you know, that's the great part of the music, that there's no way to really explain what that is. You know,
the family part of it, really.
Oh yeah, and that was very important. I spent some time with Max Roach. It was very different. And I wish I had, my understanding of who Max Roach is better now than it was then. I think I could have taken more advantage of being in his presence. He did give me some insightful information, but, and then, you know, Art Blakey, not so much. I mean, I played with Art Blakey, but I wasn't really part of what was actually going on. I was there for a little while, but you know, these guys were, they represented like a real masculine, a manly kind of a thing. Sometimes now we look at that as being a negative, but they, you know, they were men who were responsible. They took the responsibility for who they were and what they were doing. And there's no way to explain the importance of that, you know, to have a Black man who is that type of an example and a model. Not to say that they were perfect human beings or perfect individuals, but just there's no way to really explain, you know, and they had a certain humility it's just, you know, we miss that kind of greatness. We miss that kind of, and my feeling is that the further we get away from, you know, the source, you know, every generation gets softer and we get further away from what the truth of something is. And people say, well, why doesn't jazz sound like it did back in the, you know, the earlier days? And you could say, well, why don't they make appliances the way that they did? Why don't the cars have the same weight that they did in the 60s now? It's like everything is kind of, is softening up. You know, we're losing things. We're losing all of our trees. And man, I hope we can get a hold of it. But, you know, it's like we're doing the best we can with it. I think, you know, the native people had the best idea. And
now you're so right about Max Roach. He was such an elegant man. He was so articulate. He was a reader. He had great ears. He was respectful, and he would tell you the truth without insulting anybody. Max Roach was extraordinary.
Oh yeah, and these guys had to, man, they had to fight. You know, like we're fighting now. It's like people just, the whole trajectory of it is just, how did these great men do what they did? And women subjected to such foolishness for so many years, for such, you know, great lengths of time. And that's what we got to just find strength there. You know, we got to find strength and just, you know, we got to figure out a way to celebrate through all of the madness, you know, and that's the greatness of the music, you know. One last question, Maya is asking, the difference between New Orleans feel and swing is the second line beat. Yeah, for sure. And it's just something that we're born with. It's something that like kids know. I remember the short version of this story is Brian Blade and myself and my brother Jason and some other musicians, we got our instruments and we walked out one Mardi Gras and we jumped in the Rex Parade. But it was just like really some ragtag stuff. So we're marching down the street. We knew 2 songs, Do What You Want and The Saints. So we were playing. So we play as a group of kids, man. These kids, you know, these brothers were probably like 8, 9 years old. And we started playing, and we walked past, and one of the kids said, man, y'all sound weak. Where your tube at? I said, boy, these kids will tell you the truth. But you know, you hear it all of the time. You might take it for granted, but they know what, so the New Orleans musicians, we know what that sound is. And if you're around it, and if you can get out there, and man, it's just the truth. They playing the truth. And that's what we all are aspiring to do. They're playing the truth. And you know, the truth that doesn't also have to be flowery and this and that. Somebody can tell you in very basic terms the truth about something, and it's the truth of it. So that's what we're trying to get to. But that New Orleans beat, man, there's nothing like it. And the solo that I played just now on Jazz Party would have been much different 15 years ago, because what I was playing was not as influenced by that funky New Orleans sound as it is now.
Delph, we will have you back at our university. As a matter of fact, the first time, now you've been there 3 times, won't be the last time, but the first time you brought that incredible Shakespearean, such sweet thunder band, and you finished on 2 nights, Friday night and Saturday night both. You finished with the line going up through
Second
the
line.
audience. It was, and there are people still talking about that. You shocked them, you thrilled them, and frankly, you opened a door that I don't know if we can open it again, but you're welcome to come back and try.
Yeah, we love the second line. And I see, you know, the last concert we played with my dad, it was the jazz festival here in New Orleans. And you know, we kind of left it to Wynton to pick the songs. So he picked like these, you had to be a jazz lover to really love these songs. So it's 90, 95 degrees, people out in the heat. You know, it's New Orleans, it's the jazz, and people want to have a party. You know, we're playing stuff, man. It was tough. But let me just say, so at the end of it, the stage manager came to me and he said, I guess I had that reputation for, you know, that kind of a thing. So he approached me and he said, hey man, we're just wondering if y'all might play the second line. Because, which was a polite way of saying, man, you know, this jazz stuff is cool, but brother, people ready for a party. So I said, okay. I said, so Branford was solo. Branford came back and I said, yeah, but they want us to play the second line. And he said, man, I don't care. We asked Wynton. So Wynton solo. Wynton comes back and we say, I said, the people want us to play the second line. And Wynton said, yeah, man, whatever, it's cool. So then I said, y'all want to walk it? That's when you walk through the audience. So Branford says, well, if your daddy walks, then I'll walk. Now, at that point, my dad had a walker. It was just like, I'm like, man, that's just cold, bro. But
Yeah, really.
So I said, so we said, yeah, we'll walk it. So, okay, cool. So I'm the trombone, so I got to go first. So we play the second line, and I march out, and man, the people just erupted, and we walked through and I could tell in that moment they were saying, we forgive you for the first 73 minutes of this concert. Thank you. And everybody was like, oh, what a great concert. We loved it. But anyway, you know, second line is such a great song. It's a blues and it's the most basic. And when you hear that trumpet call, you know something about to happen, something about to break off. So
can we end with you playing the opening of the second line on your bone?
Man,
right
it ain't gonna be the same. I'd rather not.
Come on, let's hear the line. Come on.
All right, we got 2 more questions. Hold on, I'm seeing these questions.
Okay.
When is imitation flattery versus cultural appropriation? That must be somebody I knew wrote that question. I'm not really sure what the question actually is. When you say cultural appropriation, you know, that's too tough of a question to get in. But I would say, you know, man, you know, it's what it is. If you like something, you imitate it, and if you get paid off of it, and the people who originally did it don't get paid off, I mean, that's just what are you gonna do? You know, if this what you're saying is what I think it is, kind of like, you know, Elvis, he sang all of the songs of somebody else. He made all of the money. People loved it. Man, that's just how it goes. That you can't, you know. The reality of it, what are you gonna do? Really? You know, Pat Boone is singing Good Golly Miss Molly. I mean, you know.
Later for that.
Yeah. All right, Alvin Baptiste, you know, again, another great educator and another great musician. He's another guy that was, you know, really, really serious about the music and, you know, practice all of the time. That's another musical family, Baptiste and the Jordans. Man, they practice Kid Jordan, and you got children that, you know, Marlon and Rachel and Stephanie Kent. They just practice all day long. All right, so someone, Ann Smith is saying, so is that why Mboya stepped on stage to change the temperature? So yeah, we have a little brother named Mboya, and he has autism. And at a certain point, he came out onto the stage. No, he came out. That's another long story that I can't really get into. But I think he came out there because he usually comes out when I play my set. He comes and he sits by me, and he has this thing he likes to rock in his chair. But he came out there. I think he thought it was different. And when he sat down, I said to him, I said, bro, you ain't gonna want to sit up here rocking. And he looked and saw the people. There was nowhere for him to really hide. You know, he likes to be hidden somewhere. And he walked off. He's like, yeah, this ain't what I thought it was gonna be. Brenda Nightingale says, is this recorded? I was late. Yes, Miss Nightingale, it's recorded, but you cannot get a copy of it there. Now, that's what you get for being late. How's that?
There you go.
Hey! Hey!
Wow. Delfeayo, you're
Thank you,
not
music
just,
lovers. We
listen,
love you.
you're not just a great jazz musician. You're a fun, wonderful human being, and we want to keep you, Delf. Don't go away too far.
Good times, baby. Good times. Yeah. Good times. Glad to be here. Glad everybody joined in. Hope that was cool.
We have Kevin who's going to take us off, and I'm sure he's appreciative, as I am, and everybody who's been here. You really are wonderful, and you will be back unless you don't want to. Let's put it that way.
Oh man, you know I love it there. I got to hang out for more than a day though, you know.
Yeah,
Plus that
Del,
hotel is
Del,
killing, man.
we can arrange that, you dig?
All right, brother Moncrief, what you got for us?
Yes, sir. Mr. Delfeayo Marsalis and Mr. Jim Merod, thank you both. This has been an amazing event. And there you have it, everyone. All of us have just experienced a once-in-a-lifetime musical and cultural journey facilitated by Jim Merod and led by a truly amazing musical genius and teacher, Delfeayo Marsalis. Delfeayo. I knew I said it wrong when it came out. It slipped. It slipped.
Delfeayo.
Yes, sir. So thanks to Mr. Marsalis, we have seen and heard firsthand a wondrous adventure of the power of jazz and how it weaves together our great American families and unites a nation for peace. The Marsalis family has served the world as a truly compassionate entity and is an unlimited reservoir and cradle for creativity, wisdom, and courage for the entire world. On behalf of Soka University of America and my Rare Center colleagues, fellow co-director Dr. Ian Reed, and fantastic faculty fellows Drs. Hortense J. Spillers, Nidani Henderson-Stahl, and Lisa McLeod, and our wonderful student fellows, Shunji Fueke and Vibu Walia. Thank you both for your presentation today, and we're looking forward to future engagements. A short note regarding two upcoming events of the Rare Center as we turn our focus to the global nature of the center. On March 30th at 6 p.m. Pacific time, the topic is Human Rights and Statelessness with Dr. Chen Tian-Shi and SUA graduate Mahesh Kashwaha. Dr. Tian-Shi shares her personal and professional experience as statelessness in both Japan and Southeast Asia. And finally, on April 29th, our very own Rare Center Distinguished Faculty Fellow, Dr. Hortense J. Spillers, is a renowned and highly respected American literary critic, Black feminist scholar, and has a focus on the American diaspora, race, ethnicity, gender, and nationality. Please stay tuned for more information. Meanwhile, please stay safe and healthy. Goodbye for now.
playing my video? No? What about my video, man? What the?
Delf,
Is that it?
you're one handsome guy and you look good tonight. Stick around. Be good to yourself. You be good to yourself.
Yeah, man. It's good to hang for a minute. And
Yeah.
I guess we'll catch up with
I
y'all.
really appreciate that you could take the time with us. Thank you so much.
No, it's no problem. Glad I could do it. I thought he's gonna play my video though, man. I'm from New Orleans. No? Okay, next time. Oh.
Town Jazz Orchestra in the house. How y'all feeling, fellas? Come on, folks. Tell me what you got for us. Oh, yes, indeed, y'all. Welcome to New Orleans, y'all. With Uptown Jazz Orchestra. Mardi Gras 2021. We come in virtual reality, baby. Oh, yes, indeed. We gonna make it do what it do. Come on, y'all. Put your hands together. We are so New Orleans. I'm so New Orleans. We like syncopated beats with uptown grooves. When you hear that big bass drum, yeah, you can't help but move. I'm so New Orleans, from the West Bank to the East. No matter where you live, drop that beat, we buck jump in the street. I'm so New Orleans, I be pretty as wild chopper too, this Mardi Gras day. When you hear this uptown funk, yeah, you know we.
What?
Man, like I said, in order to be big chief, you got to be smart. But to be big chief, you got to know your history. To be big chief, you got to lead. And obviously, I'm the better leader. Play solo, nobody can hear you, man. You from Baton Rouge, man. Baton Rouge got the biggest streets. No big chief.
The Cookie Monster.
How you gonna be a big chief in Baton Rouge? Ain't got no streets, man. Gonna be a big chief.
Who they talking about being the big chief? I'll be the big chief when the morning comes. Nobody kneel and nobody run. Told my wife and my little old son, sharpen my hatchet and load my gun. I'll be the big chief when the morning comes.
Woo.
You go to New Orleans, you ought to go see the Mardi Gras. Yeah, you're right. Hey, if you go to New Orleans, you ought to go.
That's pretty silly and pretty much
That's silly,
fun.
right? But look, I gotta tell you this, and it's the truth. You could hear the wind. Man, the wind was going crazy, and when the big chief hit that tambourine, the wind stopped. He hit the tambourine, and then he says his lines, and then the wind come back up. Yeah, the big chief ain't nothing
That
like
cost
it.
a lot of money to choreograph that one.
Yeah, some things money cannot buy, and that was one of them.
Unbelievable.
All right, y'all, I'm gonna get on out of here. Thanks, Big Jim.
Granted my best, if you would.
I certainly will. All
All
right.
right.
Catch you later. All right, y'all.
Thank you. Out. We're out.
Howdy.
Yeah. Thank you.